Hey, what's up, guys? It's Oakley, and I'm here with Indypride and ArchWarhammer, and we'll be discussing recent Warhammer news. The main points we want to try and discuss is going to be the campaign map in general, some of the mechanics and aesthetics. Then we're going to be talking about the interplay between how different factions can or cannot conquer each other, and then finally we're going to talk about the unit rosters. So I'm going to pass it on to these two guys who are going to do brief introductions. So let's start with Arch and then Indypride.
Hello, I'm ArchWarhammer. I do lore, as you well know.
And I am Indypride from Milk and Cookies Total War. Been doing a bunch of Call of Warhammer multiplayer content on my channel recently.
Yeah, so we're going to start off, like I said, with the campaign map. So I did get some hands-on experience. Well, not really hands-on. I was there in the room when they showed it to us, and we could ask a lot of live-fire questions. And I was blown away by the map itself. I think that's one of the things that we all agree upon is really cool. I think when everyone saw that first teaser trailer, everyone's like, no way. Kind of just brushed it off, and then they showed the actual gameplay. And it is really cool, and that is something they've put a lot of work and effort into, and the lore breeze through it. So I think I've been pretty impressed with it. I'm gonna pass it on to these guys to see what they think. I know Arch had some comments he wanted to put forth.
Like, for me, the map looks beautiful. I'm really impressed with it. And the fact that it has a bit of a dynamic element to it where you capture settlement and it changes is fantastic because it allows you to actually feel like you're doing something on the map. You're not just changing around names or place names, you're actually changing the landscape, spreading vampire corruption nonsense, and well, if you're willing to shell out the money, chaos corruption, one would assume, which is really cool. It's a physical effect on the map that evolves as you expand, which I really like.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that I've always wanted is more and more of the or break away from the map just staying as it is. And that's the direction they've been going slowly but surely. They did it in Rome too, where they showed the city expansion, the footprint growing, and then also roads spreading around. And then Attila came with the sections of the map being kind of if you raise it, then it gets all burnt out. And now I think they're taking it the logical next step, which is awesome. And I think that's one of the big things that we really appreciated early on, which is where CA was saying, hey, we're going to do a fantasy title because it lets them experiment with this new stuff. And the next time they go back to a historical title, they can totally implement this type of dynamic map changing stuff back into the historical title. So that's one of the benefits I think we're seeing from this, and it definitely makes it much more immersive. And did you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think the map is just absolutely gorgeous, as you guys said. One of my favorite parts about it is that they seem to be adding elevation and like a fantasy twist to this map, which of course is what Warhammer is. It's what it needed. But I could have seen them doing something like a Rome 2 map, kind of, I wouldn't say boring to look at, but this map is just it's amazing. It's got so many different twists. We saw a flyover of Bretonia. We saw a flyover of Norska and saw some Norse dwarf settlements and Kislev and everything. It just the whole everything together just kind of fits together perfectly, and it's just how I imagined the Warhammer campaign map to look like. And they did a fantastic job with it. I'm really happy. And like you zoom down and you look at the dwarf Carax and the mountains and stuff, and that's one thing that I think was lacking from other campaign maps in the past, like Rome 2 and Rome 1 and Medieval 2 and stuff like that, is that the you didn't really get a sense of elevation or different kind of geographical characteristics. I mean, you saw desert, you saw plains, you saw forest, but they're adding a lot more on top of that, and it's just very detailed. And I'm very happy that you look at something like a dwarf carrack and you see it kind of rising up from a mountain, and you've got like just all these kinds of really interesting details, intricate details that I think they've just nailed. I mean, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, they've done a good job of working around the fact that they said there's going to be no seasons. I think pretty well, which is really cool. And yeah, I like the fact that you can zoom in super close. And before, whenever you did that in previous Total War games, you zoom in really close, and it's almost like looking at an image up close, and then you see all the pixelation, and you're like, oh, I should zoom out a bit. But in this one, they've gone, to the attention and detail where you zoom in, and you're like, oh wow, now I'm finding out this cool stuff. Especially like you said, the Karaks that are actually built into the mountains themselves. They kind of like curve around the mountain. All the cities built into the terrain. That's something in previous games. Like if you looked at Rome or Paris or other big Constantinople, different cities, you zoomed in and it was like, oh, okay, it's kind of these little weird looking buildings and stuff. But it was never something that looked awe inspiring. And I think they really hit that nail on the head. And like I said, I really hope that they take all the lessons learned and different things they've been testing out in this and apply it to future historical titles. I wouldn't mind having a higher fantasy looking historical title. I think that'd be really cool. Arch, do you have anything else about this before we move on to the different race conquering stuff?
No, I'm good.
Cool. Well, do you guys have any downsides or things you didn't like about the campaign map?
I wouldn't say downsides. I did notice that Athel Lauren was blocked off, and in the dev interview they had a really interesting thing. They talked about how it's no one would ever want to venture there, and how it's blocked off by wards and stuff, which was basically what I was saying. Wood elves will be coming sometime in the future. I think they'll probably be a DLC or free LC race in the first game. We do know Creative Assembly has already said that there will be a free LC race. I think a lot of people are thinking it's going to be Bretonia. I think that would make a lot of sense because in terms of the amount of work to make that faction, it would probably be less than something like Wood Elves. It's basically Grail Knights, Knights of the Realm, Knights Errant, Peasants, and then Pegasus Knights would be the only extra thing that I can think of that would really be a lot of work. Maybe the Lady of the Lake, I guess. But I mean, it looks awesome. And I guess for Athel Lauren as well, like we're gonna see Wood Elves at some point in the first game, just because it's in the old world. It would be very logical for them to get added at some point, probably as a DLC race. But I thought that was funny, just the way they were talking about it in the dev interview. Oh, you wouldn't want to go there yet. You don't want to get in that forest at all. You'll probably die. But it was a nice little hint, and we also saw, like I said, we saw Kislev and Norse dwarfs as well. So they're showing a lot of factions that aren't going to be playable at release, and they're probably not going to have their entire rosters finished yet. But I think that's important that they're going to be adding like maybe a quarter or a half of a roster, just the iconic stuff for each faction. So if for some weird reason Skaven make it into the first game, you fight them, they're going to have some of their iconic units so that they feel like Skaven. Again, they're not going to have their entire roster. They're not going to have their quest chains. That's stuff that they get added later on when they become playable. But it'll be cool to see all of these races on the campaign map at once. And I guarantee you there will be factions on the campaign map that we can play against that will have unique units, but they're just not going to be playable yet.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's move on to the next point, which is going to be the fact that CA seems to have indicated, although the waters are a bit murky at this point, they seem to have indicated that certain factions can only conquer and take over cities of other factions. So you have a set of combinations going on here where, for instance, the Greenskins, I think, can attack a Dwarven Karak. If they take it over, they can occupy it. But if they were to attack a Empire settlement, they wouldn't be able to occupy it. They would just sack or raise it. So it starts to pose the question, okay, whoa, hold on. Which factions can do what, and how is this going to limit the expansion? Because we've already talked about it in a previous video. All the legendary lords start in the same position. So no matter who you choose, you can only start in the same position. And then if furthermore you can only expand in one direction because of the mechanics at play, that's just going to severely hamper the replayability. So that's a big issue that I figured we'd open up the forum and talk about now. Arch, did you have comments about this?
Oh, for me, this seems like an absolutely ridiculous thing that I can't imagine them doing. But then again, Creative Assembly has surprised me before. What I'm kind of hoping is that they're just saying that you can't completely raise a Dwarven Karak simply because it's built into the bloody mountain, and leveling the mountain is going to be one hell of a task with middle-aged technology. So I'm kind of hoping that they just articulated it poorly, so to say, because if it's actually as limited as that, why? It makes no sense from a gameplay perspective, from a lore perspective. It just seems like such a ridiculous thing for them to do.
Well, I will say from a lore perspective, like an Empire army is not going to go into a greenskin town and want to just live in that town. Obviously, they're going to want to build something that's their own if they ever decided to go attack the Badlands or whatever. So from that standpoint, I do understand it. I'm not. If this is what they go, where you can, if you're greenskins, you can only take dwarf Carracks, and if you're Empire, you can only take Sylvanian settlements. That is going to limit you, and that is going to be really dumb. What we have heard though is that, or Joey on CA on the forums said that they're going to be releasing a dev blog relatively soon here. We don't know when. It could be soon TM, which could mean months from now. But she did say that they're going to be giving us more information on this, and what a lot of people are thinking thinking is that as an Empire faction, you could move into a greenskin settlement, destroy the settlement. You would then have to raise it and then rebuild in your own image, rebuild an Empire settlement in that location. So from that standpoint, yes, you could expand to different places. It would be harder to do it in the Badlands, or it would be harder to do it in a Dwarf Karak, just because that's not typically where an Empire army would want to live. We don't know exactly. We don't have all the details yet. They are going to give us more information on that soon. But yeah, I agree. If you're limited to literally, you can only conquer and occupy your rival settlements, I think that is going to hurt replayability and limit your campaigns a lot. I just don't think that CA is going to stick that hard to it, because I can't imagine. Like, part of Total War is painting the map your color. And so if it's literally you can only raise settlements that aren't your nemesis, like, that's going to be really dumb. I just don't think CA is going to do that, though.
Hmm. So yeah, it does. I guess to play devil's advocate, it does make it kind of cool in a sense that the dwarves are going to be expanding, for instance, along a chain of mountains and this kind of spread out from there, and then just do forays into the flatlands to go, I don't know, quest and stuff, and then they retreat back to the mountains. But it just cuts down the expansion time for your kingdoms, where hey, I can expand up to a certain point, and then at a quarter of the total campaign's length, I've already, maxed out my population. Then what do you do for the rest of the game? Do you just go raiding stuff? And then do you perhaps just try and survive and beat back chaos? So it has a lot of potential pitfalls. The mechanics seem a little interesting to me because you mentioned, what happens if Empire attacks the dwarves, takes over the Karak, and they raise it and they rebuild an Empire settlement. Um, like we saw the Karak that was up in the mountains, right? It was built in to the
Mm-hmm.
mountain. Would the Empire City be built into the mountain as well? Or would it then be, not built into the mountain if you raise it and then in that same region you have to rebuild a settlement? Would it be built on the low ground? That's something that just started springing to mind. And from a, a CA perspective, I don't see them remapping where the settlement is located and doing all this weird stuff. So I think either way they do it, it poses some problems to them. So I'd be interested to see what they put up in that dev blog.
Yeah, I saw a really interesting map where some people are thinking that there are just going to be certain regions of the map that you can conquer. So say you're a dwarf, you're only going to want to conquer settlements that are in mountains where you could build a Karak. So, for example, the World's Edge Mountains are huge. They cover much of the eastern portion of the map, and they kind of swoop down. I think they curve to the west, and that's kind of where the Badlands are, or something like that. I don't have the map up in front of me, but basically what people are thinking is dwarfs could only conquer mountain settlements, and of course they're going to be a bunch because of how big the World's Edge Mountains are. They're going to be a bunch of mountain settlements, and then yeah, you could do the raising or something or whatever. But again, this would kind of focus you into a kind of narrow view of the campaign where you're only conquering mountain settlements and then killing anything else you want to, but you can't conquer outside of that. For example, the Empire could just be limited to the flatlands that are inside the World's Edge Mountains, basically where the Empire is the full Empire. Again, we don't know how they're going to do it yet, but it was a really cool. It's on one of the threads on the forums that kind of gives you an indication of what kind of stuff you could or could not conquer. But again, we're not exactly sure how they're going to handle it yet.
Sure. Yeah, I guess now we'll move on to the third point, which is going to be the unit rosters. So far we've taken a look vaguely at most of them, except for the vampire counts. The two official ones that have been released is going to be the dwarf roster and then also the Empire Army roster. I think my initial impressions was the dwarf army roster looked pretty good, pretty solid. There's a couple of things that were missing in there. Any mention of kind of rune-based units or the Anvil of Doom. The gyro bomber, I was surprised wasn't there. That's something that they explicitly mentioned to me when I had met up with them before. They said, yeah, you're gonna have the gyrocopter and then the gyro bomber. It seems like it maybe got cut. I don't know what's happening with that, or perhaps it'll be like a War Machines DLC. I don't know, man. And then the Empire as well seems pretty sparse.
One of the things about that, we still, again, they said full roster on both of these, and yes, I think that would be weird from a marketing perspective if they said this is the full roster and then gave us more when we got closer to release. But I have to say, we are still 5 months from release, so it is possible that we see stuff like, I know you made the video about the Nolan Gunnery Skull and the Temple of Ulrich in Middenheim. Those are potential unit creating buildings that might be there. So we could see Knights of the White Wolf, Tübingen Guard come from the Temple of Ulrich and Mindenheim. We could see mortars or something like that built in the Nuln Gunnery School. So again, it says full unit roster, and I would agree with you guys if you told me there's no way they're going to add more to that just because it says full and that was their idea. But I think that it is possible that we see free LC or units that are simply not included in this full roster that we'll still get access to. For certainly like mercenaries, free company, possibly Dogs of War, although that is definitely a DLC
I
possibility.
heard somewhere
Um,
that they said there's going to be no mercenaries.
did you?
Yeah, I think it was someone who had watched the live stream or somewhere. It was someone saying they heard it from somewhere else. So
Yeah, I'll take that as hearsay until I know for sure that that's true. I haven't heard anything like that, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Um, I think that there are going to be, well, I think that there are going to be more units than they're letting on just because we're so far from release. I think it's crazy they even showed the entire unit roster so far from release. I can't remember the last time for a Total War game they actually gave us this much information so far away from release. I mean, I know people are chomping at the bit to get vampire count information and stuff like that, but I have to keep saying like I can't remember the last time I've seen a game that gives us this much info so far away. So I don't know. We're gonna get more for sure. I know that.
and I think part of the reason people see these rosters and are left wanting is because, with historical titles, you have a vague idea of what units could be there, but there's no list of here are exactly what units
Hmm.
should be there. But with Warhammer, there's the whole
Yeah, people
table.
just Google the unit rosters like
Yeah.
this is missing, this is missing, this is missing. Yeah, and I understand that because I did it too. Like for Empire Knightly Orders, I really want them to expand on that. I would love to see Teutoburger Guard their release, maybe Knights Panther as well. I realize they're not going to release 10 different Knightly Orders for the Empire at the beginning of the game. I understand why they didn't do that. At the same time, I want more than Reichsguard and Demigryph Knights. A little bit more variation here would be good. Again, I'm not going to kill myself because the Empire doesn't have archers, but for a unit that's that easy to make, it does kind of make you question what are they going to be doing in the future here with these factions? Why are archers not there? That would probably be really easy for them to add.
Yeah, and I
Maybe they're coming with Sterling or something like that. Again, we don't know what their plans are, so it might make sense that they're not there, but I think we'd rather have them at release, obviously.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, Arch, what you think about this. Like, if you were to take the current army selection from the Empire and say on the tabletop, these are the only units you're allowed to use, would that at all be representative of the Empire? Would it all be competitive, or does it really take away a lot from the Empire? Same with the dwarves, I guess.
Oh, the removal of archers is a bit of a problem because you're removing one of the quickest firing versions from a tabletop perspective, and you're also then kind of trusting that Creative Assembly has figured out how to solve the wall problems. Because in Medieval, which was last time we had proper crossbows and guns, etc., they couldn't shoot over walls worth a shit. So I'm kind of hoping that's been fixed. Otherwise, that'd be horrible. But like the rosters themselves, I didn't consider them to be as bad as a lot of people did. There's a lot of stuff missing, but we already knew we were going to get milked. I'm just hoping that this is, as Indy said, just the beginning list. Because in all due likelihood, they panicked once they realized what a massive screw up the whole chaos stuff was, and the fact that they released a full army list and they need to give us stuff, otherwise we wouldn't shut up for obvious reasons. So I'm hoping these just aren't finished, which, fine, okay. You had to throw something out there to pacify us, okay, I can kind of understand that. I'm really hoping they're not finished. Like, at the very least, add in archers. I mean, come on, why not?
Yeah, like again, I'm not gonna kill myself because archers aren't in there. Just like, why are they not? Like that would be a very easy one. And again, they could have lore reasons why they're doing it. Oh, we're doing a Sterling DLC or free LC. Month after the game comes out, archers will get added. Then cool, I understand. Whatever, not a problem. Again, I'm not gonna pay $5 for a unit pack that has archers in it. That's stupid as hell. But there could be reasons for it. And again, we're so far from release, it could be a bunch of things. But let's actually, Arch, I had a question for you. When you look at the dwarf roster, we know that they're missing, I guess, gyro bombers and rune lords, and we did hear in the interview that they're going to be having runes. So, okay, actually, this is an important point that we haven't talked about yet. Each race is going to have these equipable things like banners before a game that will buff your troops in certain ways. So, I think for the chaos, they're going to have marks of chaos. So you could probably put a Nurgle one on your guys that buffs up defense or HP or something like that. And then for Empire, you're going to have different banners that might give a buff to reload skill or blah, blah, blah. There's going to be a bunch of different stuff like that. They aren't going to be cosmetic. You're not going to see them on the campaign map, but they are going to change what you're doing. So they're doing that the same thing for runes as well. You can put a certain rune on a unit that will give them even more magic resistance, and they said that dwarfs would have magic resistance innately. It would be a cosmetic thing. So we know we're not getting rune lords for dwarfs right away, but my question was, when you look at the dwarf roster right now, how reflective do you think that is of the tabletop game? When I looked at it, I felt like, and again, I didn't play the tabletop, but it looked like they weren't missing anything important really except for the rune lords, and it sounds like they're going to be having the buffs from rune lords just kind of innately in their passive buffs. So what was your thought on the dwarf roster? What did you think could be better about it, I guess?
Oh, they missed relatively few units. It's the Rangers, it's the Gyro Bomber, it's the Ballista, the Bolt Thrower. But I'm just really surprised that they don't have any form of Rune Lord, simply because that is the Dwarf's army one and only defense against magic. So I'm really wondering how they're going to do that, because runes can be buffing, certainly, but they can also be used as bound spells that invoke certain effects. So the fact that the dwarf army will have literally no magic, when in tabletop they do actually have magic, it is just far more defensive than most other races, it makes me wonder what's going to happen when the dwarves get into a fight with an enemy mage. Are they going to be left as completely defenseless? So that's what worries me. I'm just assuming maybe that they'll throw in a passive, essentially, which the dwarves do
Yeah,
have, and resistance against magic, and just go like, well, we're just going to sell you the rune lords later because, well, let's be honest here, that's probably what they're going to do. I'm
yeah,
just really surprised that it's not in to begin with, at least in a basic capacity. Not even all of the rune lords, but maybe just a rune wielder. Or maybe it is a system, like you suggested, in the game that you have a loadout. This and this and this increases magical resistance, increases resistance against fire, blah blah, stuff like that, which would be fine-ish.
yeah. That wasn't conjecture on my part. They explicitly said that that's how it's going to work. You're going to have runes that you can put on certain units before a battle, and dwarfs will have passive innate magic resistance. So they won't get obliterated by the purple sun of Xerius or whatever if it gets launched on your troops. Again, you're going to lose guys to it, but they do have at least some form of 25-30% magic resistance, so it will mitigate some of the damage from magic. They said that explicitly.
Hmm.
But but
Yes,
I
the
do
purple
agree.
sun of Prepare Uranus.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't said anything about this. I do think that Thorak Ironbrow. Again, we know legendary lords are going to get added for all of these factions, all of these races. Thorak Ironbrow would be a very logical choice. He's a rune lord. He's going to play very differently from Ungrim or Thorgrim. He's going to get added at some point, whether it's free LC or DLC. I don't know. Again, this is not a thing that bothers me very much because the legendary lords I don't feel like are a necessary thing. Like if you want to have Thorak Ironbrow, sure, pay $2 to get it or whatever, or with a unit pack, that's fine. If you don't want it, you don't really lose out on anything. It's not like an essential part of gameplay. I do think that rune lords are important, and it sounds like they're going to have something in place for the first game for runes. So again, I would have rather seen a third legendary lord for the dwarves, of course, where you could actually cast runes. That would be way cooler. Bringing an Anvil of Doom to a battle would be way cooler, but they haven't completely neglected having runes or passive magic resistance in the game, which is good.
Cool. Well, I think we've kind of burned through most of our points. It's getting to be a lengthier video, but this is fine. I think we covered it pretty adequately. Did you guys have any closing words or thoughts? Arch, I guess.
For me, it's just I like the general direction they're going in. I actually do. It's just the fact that they promised us depth is starting to ring a little hollow in my ears.
In certain areas, yeah, I'd agree with that. The campaign map, I mean, certainly it seems like they've put a lot into it, and the artists have been able to go all out. The quest chains and the upgraded UI seems pretty cool. But then the basic stuff like the units and certain other features, yeah, seems like it hasn't been given quite the attention. And that's kind of one of the things I'm worried about for the vampire counts, is I'm imagining behind the scenes they're like, holy shit, we don't have any of these units done, and they're diverting everyone to try and finish that up, to try and share
Yeah.
something with us soon.
I don't know.
Very
I don't know.
possibly.
It's possible. I think that they just want to again. I don't want them to blow their load so early, 5 months away. Like if they've showed us the whole game by the time we get to release, it's like what is there to be excited about? I want to be surprised by some things, hopefully in a good way. I don't want to boot up the game and be like, oh wow, this is horrible. They left out a bunch of stuff that they didn't talk about. Like no, I want them to be good surprises, but I don't want everything to get spoiled before I get there. So I'm happy, at least right now, with the amount of information they've been giving us. I think they've been pretty upfront with stuff. I think that again, stuff like Chaos DLC, blah blah blah. Some of their marketing has been poor, you could say. You could definitely make that argument.
Yeah.
But I do like the information that they've been giving us. I think they've been pretty upfront, and I'm happy about it so far. Some things I'd like to change though. Unit rosters I'd like them to be bigger. Certain units, blah blah blah. But there's some stuff that they could do better. I'm happy with it though.
Cool. I think we'll end it there. And if any of you guys made it to the end of this video, we did have one other video that I wanted you guys to look at, which is kind of the complaint about the same starting locations for all legendary lords for the same race poses a lot of issues for replayability. If you guys haven't seen that yet, just definitely pay attention to that. Take a look at it. It's an important point to make, and it's one of those areas that we find CA is lacking. So if they want to keep the community happy and this ball rolling in the right direction, I think that's one of the big things that they have to address. But anyways, yeah, we'll leave it here, and I think we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.
See you guys.